Hello, I'm Tiffany Cloud. Welcome to The Storm, and thank you for watching today on WYLN-TV 35. The general election is right around the corner. One of the interesting area races is that for the 11th Congressional District, a seat currently held by Congressman Lou Barletta, a Republican. Well, today I am joined by the man who wants to take his job, Democrat Andy Ostrowski. So stay tuned, we're talking politics on The Storm right after the break. Welcome back to The Storm. Joining me today in studio, candidate for Congress in the 11th Congressional District, running as a Democrat, Andy Ostrowski. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
Well, I appreciate you coming to the greater Hazleton area.
Always glad to be here.
And this is your first sit-down televised interview, correct?
This should be my first official sit-down interview.
We
Thank
like
you very
it
much.
when The Storm is the first. We like
I'm
that.
happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I want to give you the opportunity, before we dive into some questions, to really let the audience get to know a little bit about you. So if you could tell the folks a bit about your background and where you're from.
Okay. I was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I went to Millersville University, Lancaster Catholic High School. Give a shout out to those folks. I moved to Harrisburg in 1989. I was the first graduating class of the Widener University School of Law in Harrisburg. I practiced law in Harrisburg at a couple firms on my own and with another fellow for a few years, doing primarily civil rights work. So that brings me current to where I am now, and now I'm a candidate for the United States Congress.
Well, and you know, it's not everybody who's practiced law decides to run for Congress, so help us understand what made you decide to do that, because that's a big decision.
Well, and it's a very big part of the story, and you know, my experience as a civil rights lawyer really gave me some insights into some things, not just in dealing with the courts, but in the struggles that people are having out there. Okay. You know, in this modern political climate of ours, I mean, I've over the years, I've represented Democrats and I've represented Republicans and I've represented Tea Partiers and people from the Occupy Wall Street movement and from the entire political spectrum. And there's just a total feeling that the government no longer works for the people anymore. Okay. And, you know, in my experience in standing with people and representing them in court, you know, I think I had a unique insight into some of that stuff. And I think that what we're really experiencing in this world is we're experiencing a justice problem, that we just don't live in a just world anymore. Okay. And I believe that there are some structural reasons for that. I believe part of it deals with the way the court system is run and operated. That's my particular expertise and what I bring to this campaign that candidates before me haven't had. But their feeling out there is that none of the three branches of government work for the people anymore. And, you know, when I hear the debates, the political debates from the right and the left, you know, it's all, the other side is pretty much saying, well, it's unjust. Their situation is unjust, or that situation is unjust. So if I had to summarize one word to describe this campaign, I would say it's a campaign for justice.
That really intrigues me, because I actually agree with you. I mean, I do agree. People are disappointed in the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch. Absolutely they are. But there seems to be this misunderstanding that the law ends with what the courts say. The people have lost the fact that we could always rewrite the law, that the Congress can always rewrite law, and the Congress and the people have the power to do that. There's just been so many court decisions lately that seem to be changing the will of the people and the desires of the people. And so I do think that that's part of the frustration out there, perhaps.
Well, and I'm really impressed with the way you articulated that question, because that really gets to the heart of the problem here, is that, you know, the people are the center of government in this country. And the people are the center of the judicial branch of the government, and they should be at the center of each of the other branches of government. And the people no longer have that access. You know, there's an extraordinary amount of control in this system that lawyers and judges have over the process. And you hinted at that through, you know, your recitation or citation to some of these more popular Supreme Court decisions that have come down recently. But day-to-day justice and the interactions of people between their government occur in the courthouses and in the courtrooms. They're closed off to people anymore. That's one of the biggest problems and frustrations that I experience and that I hear of through my experiences, because I hear of a lot of people and their frustrations in the courts. But it's a key, you know, give government back to the people is the so-called slogan that I'm using for this campaign on my website and things of that nature. And we do. We need to make people more interactive with their government.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is how do you go about doing that? How do you go about changing this back to being a we the people country, which is what it's supposed to be?
Well, you do it in the instance of the courts by, you know, first, there's a real problem in the court system. And I just have to come out and say it, and I talk a lot about it. I have a project called the Pennsylvania Civil Rights Law Network that I've written a lot about, and I've put together a group of people. And we have a problem with access in the courts. You know, we need to do things like look at jury nullification as an issue. Instead of a judge telling you that you have to follow the law as instructed, you know, you got to give that function to a jury. Historically, that's the way it was in this country. You need to do things like make sure that there are cameras in every courtroom. Make sure that all proceedings are recorded. Make sure, so the theory behind that is, you know, first and foremost, the saying that I use is light is the best disinfectant. So first and foremost, we need to start shedding light on some of these problems so people can start to understand them. Because you need to understand, Tiffany, that most people in this country, what they know about the system of justice, they pretty much learn by the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade. Okay. And that is that we have the best, greatest, most fair system of justice in the world, and maybe by design that's what it is. And most people then for the rest of their lives don't go into a courtroom. They don't have anything to do with the courts. So that remains their operating presumption for their entire life. It was my presumption until I started coming across some things. And the unlearning of those things we learned so long ago is a very difficult, very trying process. You know, so I'm talking about issues that really are only intimately understood by probably less than 1% of the population. But these things have implications far beyond, you know, what goes on in a courtroom. They affect our interactions with our government on a daily basis, your rights in relation to the rights of the police or other law enforcement authorities. And this all happens in the crucible of the courtroom.
It's interesting when you talk about the need for cameras in all courtrooms. One of the things that I know you've been very involved in is the entire Kids for Cash story, and certainly had there been cameras in all of those courtrooms, perhaps the situation would not have occurred that did occur. Could you tell the folks a bit about some of your work as related to Kids for Cash? Yeah,
well, you know, I haven't specifically been involved in the Kids for Cash situation. I do happen to know that there were people, highly placed law enforcement agencies, the United States Attorney's Office, District Attorney's Office, that for years prior to that becoming a problem, knew what was going on. And this whole way that the system works, the legal system in particular works to protect itself, that kept a lid on this stuff until they had a problem that they could no longer control, and they put the two, I mean, thank God the judges were convicted, and justly so. But there are some underlying problems that still have not been addressed, and the key problem from my standpoint is, you know, when those children were being sentenced to placement without having attorneys present, excessive sentences for very minor offenses, you know, minor disciplinary offenses, things that kids do. You know, the most troublesome aspect of this is that there were lawyers sitting in those courtrooms watching this go on.
And they allowed it to
And they allowed it to go on.
Right. That's,
yeah. And then what happens in this system to lawyers who speak out against that stuff is they become targets of the disciplinary system.
It's appalling. We have to take a break right there. We will be right back on The Storm. Welcome back to The Storm. You know, Andy, you sound a lot like a libertarian as we've been talking. Would you describe yourself truly as a Democrat, or do you think you are more of a libertarian?
Well, you know, my tendency, and one of the things that I've objected to in the modern political world, is this tendency for everybody to have a label for somebody.
Fit in a box.
So I choose not to apply a label to myself, but I will say that there are libertarian groups out there who are supporting me.
Okay.
And you know, I certainly, in the common parlance, would be probably, you know, a small government Democrat very much. You know, I think, you know, it's a much more complicated and difficult question than the 1 or 2 minutes that I have, because it gets to some real, you know, philosophical beliefs about the kind of world that we should live in.
But I think the fact that you say you're small government, I mean, that tells me a lot already about you. That's interesting, because a lot of Democrats aren't necessarily small government, so that's intriguing. I want to give you the opportunity to answer an area that you're probably going to have a lot of questions coming from the other side as you campaign going forward. Your law license has been suspended, and if you could tell the folks about that.
Sure. You know, I would not have chosen to run for this office, such a public office, and represent 700,000 people in the United States of America, if I did not expect this to be an issue. And I think in the end, this will be an issue that for the people who study it will be a positive for me.
Okay.
There's not a real easy answer to it, because there's a confluence of personal circumstances and professional circumstances.
Okay.
You know, I've suffered in the past. You know, I've gone through some things in my life, and you know, I've gone through them for a reason. Let me just first say that for anybody that wants the full story, I've not hidden anything about this, and I never will hide anything about this. There's a full personal disclosure on my website at ostrowskiforcongress.com or andyostrowski.com. We're kind of in between two sites right now. But yeah, I mean, in the past, I had some issues from a childhood injury, post-traumatic stress disorder from a burn. And you know, I didn't develop the best coping mechanisms with those, and that has interfered at times with my practice, my functioning. I did not know that that's what I was dealing with until probably 18 months ago or so. And since I learned what it is I'm dealing with, I've gotten way out in front of it, you know, and we're on the path, you know, every day is a better day. It's also a big part of this is the career path that I chose. You know, being a civil rights lawyer in this system, it's not only very stressful in general, because you're dealing with the most significant problems in people's lives. People have been abused and mistreated by the system and their employers, and that's who comes to you. And it takes a special kind of person to do that, and you walk in your client's shoes with them, and you feel their pain, and you go the extra mile. It's not a slip and fall case, and it's not, you know, a contract dispute. It's your violation of your fundamental rights, what we in the Declaration of Independence want to call our bond with our Creator. Right. And you feel those, you feel the violation of those rights in ways that are very difficult for people to understand. But so it's a very stressful world to live in general. And on top of that, and I just will come right out and say this, and I'll back it up with evidence, civil rights lawyers are not favored. Civil rights plaintiffs' lawyers are not favored in the system of justice. They are singled out for discipline at greater rates than other lawyers. They are singled out for sanctions at greater rates than other lawyers. There are obstacles to representing the rights of the individual in contrast with the government. It's a choice I made. I had some personal circumstances that overlapped with it. Now, specifically to the license issue, I have been eligible to have my license reinstated since February 2011.
Okay, so you're not disbarred. Your license was suspended. You are eligible for reinstatement.
Yeah, and absolutely, and actually, I'm taking the steps right now. And there's a history. You know, nothing. Unfortunately, I mean, this is good. I mean, it makes me a real human being running for this office. But nothing in my life, including this answer to this short question you asked me, is simple. And I have been in the process through some strategic ways of going about this legally through proper channels. I'm a very accomplished attorney. I've graduated at the top of my law school class. I have never had a problem with my competency, and I think judges and other lawyers have known that. So I've approached this from a litigation perspective, the return of my license. But I am in the process of doing that, and I made a decision for a while to not get it reinstated, but it is fully eligible to be reinstated. I'll probably have a fight because they'll come up with reasons because of the things I've talked about.
I have two questions related to it, and certainly as a military wife, I'm acutely aware of post-traumatic stress. I'm acutely aware of the fact that people often use various substances to numb the stress, and I'm certainly, you know, I think at the end of the day you come out on the other side of it okay in the end. That's what's most important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it is terrible trauma. The one thing I guess that some may ask is, you know, when you numb with a substance that's an illegal substance, you know, should you be running for an office that's about the law? And I'm sure that's going to come up, and I know you know it's going to come up, and I think it's wonderful that you have fully disclosed that, and I commend you for fully disclosing as opposed to trying to deny. I really do. We have too many politicians in denial, and I appreciate that you've done that. Related though, I guess, you know, running for Congress is going to be stressful too.
Right.
It's going to be really stressful.
Right.
So you feel like you're good to go?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, and let me just make it clear, you know, I sit here and I do not use any numbing substances or anything.
Correct.
I don't take any medications at
Good.
all.
Okay.
You know, I treat myself through holistic practices, spiritual practices, mindfulness practices, and there are things, you know, the biggest obstacle in my life to this was never knowing the condition that I was dealing with. So, you know,
Now you know.
again, it's so complicated, but at the end of the day, when the other side is attacking me on those issues, you'll know that there are reasons that they're doing that, and that it's to stay away from this other message that I'm trying to talk about, and the reason that I'm really running, and the reason that I'm willing to put myself on the line and suffer a little bit of personal humiliation. It's not. I mean, I'm not humiliated by it, but risk that in the perspective of other people. I know that there are problems that are going on in this country. I've got some fundamental reasons or beliefs about the nature of those problems, and I want to talk about those problems as a candidate for Congress and represent the people of the 11th Congressional District, and can do so and will do so.
Okay,
and we'll have no
another
problems doing
area
so.
I'd love to ask you about is you currently have a lawsuit against the police chief of Hazleton Area Police. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I can talk about that a lot. I had one of my petition gatherers circulating petitions for me back in March. I think the date was maybe March 5th or 6th. She was stopped on Alter Street in Harrisburg by an as yet unknown police officer, and had 3 sheets of signatures taken from her.
And that police chief, you're saying, was the
Well,
chief?
we're not sure. I'm not 100% sure, and there's some investigation that's continuing. No.
Okay.
Now, recently, again, like I said, nothing is real simple with me.
Okay.
So this is a little bit complicated. After that lawsuit was filed, you know, I filed that lawsuit when I filed it because it was before the petitions needed to be filed. I didn't know at that time if those 67 signatures were going to be critical in my getting on this ballot or not. So I took the immediate legal action to preserve my rights to challenge that and to request injunctive relief to get those signatures back. I made the number. I got over 1,700 signatures. You only need 1,000. And after that happened, or actually it was before that happened, it was before the signatures were submitted, I tried to track the chief down. I called him on 3 numbers that I had for him, and I sent him an email, and the email's part of the record of the case. And in the email I said, look, Chief, you and I hopefully will be working together in the future. I know that, you know, your city's still dealing with a couple $1 million in attorney's fees from the immigration lawsuits that Mr. Barletta unsuccessfully pursued, or that were pursued against him in the face of his policy. You know, maybe your residents, the city, the people of Hazleton don't need another lawsuit or want another lawsuit right now. So how about you get me my signatures back, and we'll you know, I'll, you know, because I discounted the possibility that there was an honest mistake involved. I don't know how in 21st century America you can believe that it's proper to go confiscating petitions for somebody trying to get on the ballot. But I offered that possibility.
Okay, I'm sorry, I need to take a break there, but we're going to pick this up after the break. We'll be right back on The Storm. Welcome back to The Storm. I want to give you an opportunity to finish up your point about the suit against the chief of police.
Yeah, and I'll try to make it quick. I made the offer to get the signatures back, and you know, I got no response. What I got was a week later, he held a press conference. He called all the local press, I guess from all the, you know, Luzerne County area. I don't know if your folks were there, and basically said I made the whole story up. And at that point, the decision was no longer, the decision was, what should I do with this lawsuit? And I made the decision that the people need to be educated. You can't do what you did and then expect to get away with it by perpetuating a lie in front of the media and the whole town. So just this past week, I filed an amended complaint and named the chief in it.
Okay, and I do know that it's typically, at least in past, if there's ever been a suit, it's typically been precedent that they don't comment. So I'm not expecting a comment.
I'll comment freely about it.
Okay,
anytime.
yes.
Anytime.
I'm expecting that the police won't comment about it based on just precedent.
Okay.
I do want to give you an opportunity to tell the folks in the last minute or so why they should vote for you and where they can go to learn more about you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. Again, this is my first official television interview, and I'd be happy to come back.
Okay.
It's been nice. I at some point want to start talking about some more issues. We've talked a lot about me today. I don't want me to be the issue. If anybody's out there making me the issue, then they're not talking about the people that are suffering in this system. And there are. I talked to some folks. You had this United Rehabilitation Service that was closed down. A lot of people are suffering there. I talked to people down in Shamokin who are dealing with some issues down there. I've been talking to people and meeting people all over the district. I want to get back to representing people on an individual, one-on-one basis, and not walking in lockstep with the political establishment, and in this case, my opponents walking in lockstep with what we've seen going on in Washington, D.C. with the Do-Nothing Congress and nobody getting anything done. When you come to my office, it's not going to depend on how many zeros are on your check. It's going to depend on what your issue is and how badly you're suffering. And those are the people that I want to represent. Those are the kind of people that I've represented as an attorney. I've done that at great personal risk and at a lot of personal suffering that went with that. And I'm going to continue to do that as the congressman.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I promise we'll have you back to talk more about issues. We do have your website up so people can learn more about you. And remember, folks, don't complain about it. You can do something about it. You can vote. Thank you for watching.